the Coders Campus podcast, where you'll learn how to code from one of the best teachers in the industry. Whether you're an absolute beginner or a seasoned pro, the Coders Campus podcast will teach you what you need to know to master the art of programming. And now, your host, Trevor Page.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, my fellow coders, welcome to this next episode of the How to Program with Java podcast. I'm so used to saying that. The Coders Campus podcast. I think we're on episode number 24 now, 25, I believe is what we're on. And today we're going to be going back to our original topic of the JavaScript language. Today's episode is going to be a good one, important one, especially when it comes to what goes on underneath the covers, if you will, behind the scenes with the JavaScript language. We're going to be talking more about the data types that are specifically used under the covers inside the JavaScript engine. So, like I said before, although the JavaScript language doesn't allow you to explicitly define a type when you declare a variable, so you use the var keyword as opposed to saying string or int or whatever it is that we're used to doing in the world of Java, the JavaScript language, doesn't define a type, but rather they shouldn't lead you to believe that JavaScript doesn't define any types, or doesn't have any types, I should say, because JavaScript absolutely does have types. It just has them behind the scenes where you're not actually interacting with them, more or less exclusively. So JavaScript uses dynamic typing, which we've talked about, I believe, in episode 23 it was. Let me just double check on my screen in front of me that I'm looking at. 21. So in episode 21, we talked about dynamic typing. If you haven't listened to that episode, please go back and listen to that one before this one. So JavaScript uses dynamic typing, and therefore this means that the JavaScript engine will actually choose the best data type for your variable based on its value. So the JavaScript engine will choose the best data type for your variable based on the value that is assigned to that variable. So this begs the question, what data types does the JavaScript engine use or choose for my variable? So the quick summary of data types that it has, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 basic data types. 6 are actual primitives, so really built in, and just like the concept of Java primitive data types, this is the same thing for JavaScript. 6 of those, and 1 that's sort of not primitive. So the primitive data types are as follows. There's a Boolean, which we all should be well familiar with, the Boolean, true or false. So you'd say var x equals true or var y equals false to initialize and assign a value to these Boolean variables. Pretty straightforward stuff. There's the null data type. So yes, null is a sort of data type, which is kind of odd, but that is the way that it's done inside of JavaScript. So if you want to have a null sort of data type assigned to something, you would assign it as null. So you'd say var, person equals null. Okay, so you just assign null to a variable, and there you go. Now JavaScript under the covers has assigned the null data type to this. Now I believe the reason why there's a null data type is because there's also an undefined data type. Okay, so that's kind of an interesting one that we've never seen before in the world of Java. So what the heck does undefined mean? Well, undefined is when you allocate some space or allocate a name for a variable and you don't assign anything to it. Okay, so for example, we say var, x again. So var x and then semicolon. So what data type does x have? Well, JavaScript essentially would need to assign a data type to this x variable, but you haven't given it any information as to what you're going to be putting inside of x. So what the heck data type is it going to choose? So it chooses the undefined data type because it just doesn't know what to define as a data type for that particular variable. So they just created a whole data type called undefined. So if you just say var x, and then that's it, your x variable will be undefined until you assign something to it. You can also explicitly define undefined or assign undefined to a variable. So you can just say var person equals undefined. Okay, that's a lowercase u. So that is a reserved word, and that will assign the data type of undefined to that person variable that we have declared. So var person equals undefined. So also there's the number data type. So number, instead of having like an int and a float and a double and all these different things, JavaScript essentially has number. So you can say, var x equals 1.2, or you can say var y equals 32. Okay, doesn't matter. Either of those will be assigned as a number data type. It also has a string data type. So you can say var a string equals, and then either double or single quotes, because JavaScript doesn't discriminate. You can use double quotes or single quotes to represent a string. The reason why we can do this is in Java, there is a char data type or character data type, right? So the character or char data type uses a single quote in Java, and double quotes in Java specifically mean string. But in JavaScript, there is no char or character data type. It's just string. Everything's a string. So you can use either single quote or double quote. Okay, there's also a symbol data type, and this is sort of a newer data type. It's another primitive that was, defined in Java version 6. I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment, but I wouldn't really focus on that one just yet. And then there's the object data type. Now, object is not primitive, and object is sort of the catch-all so to speak, just like in the Java language. And it has its own special syntax for the object. Let me just scroll down my notes and make sure I talk about. Yeah, I'll talk about the syntax of the object data type in just a moment. But it essentially uses JSON, which is JavaScript Object Notation. JSON, JavaScript Object Notation. Again, I'll talk about that in just a moment. So now I went over that fairly quickly, and because this is the world of audio, and audio doesn't, gel well when it comes to trying to teach someone a programming language, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back over all those data types again, just to make sure that they are solidified in your mind. Again, let's go back over them. The Boolean data type, it's a primitive type. It's straightforward. It contains only two values, true and false. Booleans are used essentially when testing conditions, just like you would use it in the world of Java. Conditions are found inside like control structures, like if statements and whatnot. So you're, like I said, you're probably already familiar with Booleans, but I figured, hey, might as well go over them again. Again, the null data type. It's, like I said, perhaps a bit strange to have a null exist as a data type, but it does in JavaScript. Actually, there's actually another sort of strange bug inside of JavaScript that I have here in my notes. That is, if you inspect the type of null, you'll actually receive the object as the type. So JavaScript has an actual keyword where you can say type of to inspect the type of any variable, because you don't know the type of the variable unless you use this type of keyword. So it's kind of weird, as if you assign null to something and then check to see the type of that variable, you'll actually receive object as a type. In any case, in an attempt to stop confusing you, just know that null is used to represent nothing. Okay, it's typically used as a placeholder for an object, so to speak. Okay, then there's the undefined data type. Again, not to be confused with null, the undefined data type in JavaScript is used to tell the coder that a variable has been declared, but nothing has yet been assigned to that particular variable. So when we write, var and then a variable, or var x or whatever, the resulting data type for that variable would just be undefined because we haven't yet assigned a value to it. What you could do if you wanted, let's say a variable to no longer be assigned something as undefined data type, so to speak. So if you don't want it to be undefined anymore, but you still didn't want to assign anything truly meaningful, then hey, you could use the null type. You assign null to it, and there you go. Now it's no longer undefined. All right, so next up again is the number data type. And like I said before, what I personally enjoy about JavaScript is that it only has the one data type to specify a number, and that's just the number data type. Okay, so when you think about the number data type in JavaScript as it relates to Java, like I said, you can state that a number in JavaScript can be an integer, a double, a float, a big decimal, a whatever, all of those at the same time. It can be all those things. So you don't need to worry about the crazy details about how JavaScript is going to handle your numbers, which is nice. One helpful function inside of JavaScript that relates to the number is the is_nan function, and that's is not a number is what NaN stands for. And the n's in this particular method call are capitalized. So is for is lowercase, capital N, lowercase a, capital N. Okay, kind of defies the convention of the camel casing and whatever. Really it should have been capital N, capital A, capital N, because not a number. They're three different words, so each of the first letters of each of those words should be capitalized. In any case, it kind of, spits in the face of convention there. So lowercase, everything except for the n's is nan. So the function, the not a number function, is used to determine if the value is indeed not a number or not. It's a bit confusing as you're working on things because it's in the negative. So if you want to check if something is a number, you're going to be looking for a Boolean value of false when running is not a number. So is NaN function. So not is NaN would return true if it is indeed not a number, right? Which means it is a number. Like I said, confusing, but hey, you'll get used to it once you start using it. Then we come to string. So a string is the most commonly used data type across pretty much any modern programming language. A string is a data type that represents any combination of characters, special characters, and or numbers that are assigned to a variable. Typically, strings are used to store English language sentences or whatever language sentences that you're using, French or German or whatever the language of the program that you're making is. They're all stored in strings. Like I said, names or even numbers you can put inside of a string as well. You can think of strings as sort of a catch-all almost data type, just like the object is. And what I mean by this is that if the JavaScript engine can't figure out what data type to assign to your variable, it's probably just going to assign as a string data type to your variable. Okay, unless you're using the object notation, in which case it's going to be an object. In any case, strings also have a wide variety of functions and properties that can make them extremely versatile, or versatile, however you like to pronounce it, and useful inside of the Java language. I'll be diving into the details in the later podcast with respect to all the things that you can do with a string. Fun with strings and methods to manipulate strings and everything are always fun to learn and to work with in any language. So JavaScript is no exception to that rule. We'll be talking about all those things in an upcoming podcast. Now, here's where I want to talk a little bit more about the symbol data type that I mentioned and how this is a new addition to the JavaScript language. The symbols are unique and immutable. Okay, so immutable, you can think of immutable as meaning the same thing in the Java language with strings, because strings are immutable. And if you think about the Java language, you cannot change a string once you've declared it, once you've created a string. You can't change it, which means it's immutable, right? And you might be saying, well, hold on a second, Trevor. I've changed strings before. I have modified them. I've done substrings. I've done, trim. I've done all these things that have modified strings. So what are you talking about? Of course, strings are not immutable. I've definitely changed them. And I would say, well, go back and check your code. You'll notice that when you execute a trim function to get rid of white space on a string, or if you execute a substring to get a part of a string and pull it out or what have you, you'll notice that it actually doesn't modify the existing string. It always returns a new string. Okay, so that's what it means by being immutable. It does not modify the actual value of the variable. It will have to return a new instance of a new, variable or new immutable version of that variable for you. So just like that, the symbol is unique and immutable. It's unique because any symbol that is created in your code is guaranteed to be different from any other symbol that you create. Again, any symbol that is created in your code is guaranteed to be different, hence unique, from any other symbol that you create. Okay, it's immutable because you will not be able to change the value of any symbol once it has been created, just like a string inside of Java. Symbols are typically used as keys for properties due to the fact that they are unique and immutable. So that is a nice property of a key to have. You would not want your key to change, like a primary key in a database. A primary key in a database is a primary key that doesn't change for a reason. It should not be mutable. It should be immutable, because if you change the primary key in a database, you're going to break all the relationships that key has on any other references to any other tables or any other rows of data and so on and so forth. So same thing here. Symbols are typically used as keys for properties due to the fact that they are immutable. If you want to learn more about it, there's a good article. If you go to the show notes of this episode, I guess you can go to coderscampus.com/25 and check out in the show notes in the symbol section where I'm talking about symbols. There's a good article that explains what it's all about. Now, finally, object. Probably the most powerful and flexible data type in JavaScript is the object data type. It's the only real data type in JavaScript that is not a primitive type. So since the JavaScript language is object-oriented, the object data type exists to fulfill its obligation. Cool? So what's neat is that you can create an object and assign properties to an object in really two different ways. The first way to create properties in an object is by using dot notation, so to speak. So again, let me step back here and talk a little bit more about this before I dive into it. So you can have an object, and an object can have properties. So let's think about, in terms of the Java language, you think about an object that we create, sort of like a person. Okay, let's create a person class, right? A person class has what are called instance variables or member variables. You do a private string name, private integer age, private string gender, and then you have getters and setters for these member variables or these instance variables, okay? Those instance variables can be thought of as properties. The age, the name, the gender are properties of the person class. Okay, so that's what we're talking about here. You can create properties in an object in JavaScript using dot notation. Okay, so the first thing that we want to talk about is how do we create an object? How do we sort of instantiate an object inside of JavaScript? Well, let's use that same person example, okay? Let's create a person. And again, you don't say object person because JavaScript doesn't have data types that you have to explicitly assign. It's dynamically typed. So you can type in var person. Okay? So var person equals, okay? Because remember, if we just do var person, then that's it. Then it's just an undefined data type. So we need to assign more to the person. So var person equals, and then you use curly brackets. Open curly bracket, close curly bracket, and then semicolon. Okay? Curly brackets, just like we do in Java with when we have any class or any scope of any method or scope of any class or scope of whatever, we use the curly brackets. Same thing here. Var person equals, open curly bracket, close curly bracket, semicolon. So what that does is when we do an open and close curly bracket, it just tells JavaScript that we want this particular variable to be assigned the object data type. Okay, it's going to be an empty object. There's going to be nothing inside of the object because it's just open curly bracket and close curly bracket. But it is going to be assigned as an object. But then if we want to add properties to the object, just like I was talking about before, where you want to add a name, an age, and a gender, you can say person, which is the name of the variable. Remember, var person equals curly brackets, person dot name equals. Okay, this is how we assign values to our properties. Person.name equals, quotes, Trevor Page. Okay? And then you can say person.age equals, 34. Person.gender equals, quotes, male. So you can assign values and at the same time as creating properties on your object by using the dot notation. Right? Pretty cool stuff. And then you can output that stuff, so you can say console.log, and that's how we do, I don't know if I've talked about console yet, but how do we, the equivalent of system.out in Java, system.out that we use in Java, the equivalent to that in JavaScript is console.log. Okay, console.log, then you can say person.name. Okay, and that'll output whatever it was that you assigned inside of the person.name property. In this case, I had assigned Trevor Page, so it'll just output Trevor Page onto my console. You can say console.log person.age. Okay, and that'll output whatever value we assign. In this case, it was 34, so it will, output 34. Console.log person.gender will output male. So there you go. Alternatively, you can actually use something called, like I said, JSON, which is an acronym for JavaScript Object Notation. JSON, JavaScript Object Notation. You can use JSON to create an object in JavaScript. So the equivalent person object that we created sort of before can be created with JSON using the following code. So instead of using dot notation, we're going to use JSON. So we're going to say var person, just like we did before, var person equals, just like we did before, open curly bracket, just like we did before. But now instead of closing the curly bracket like we did before, we're going to start putting stuff into these curly brackets, into the scope of the curly brackets. In other words, this is where we're going to be using JSON, the JavaScript object notation. What you do is it's key value pairs that you're putting inside of the curly brackets. So just like you do in Java with a hash map where you have a key and a value, you put in a key and a value into the curly brackets inside of a JavaScript object. Now, the difference is we don't, in the world of Java, we put a key and then we put a comma and then we put a value. Okay, that's how we do it in Java. In JavaScript, it's a little bit different. We do key, value. Okay, and then if you want to add another key and value pair, we put a comma. So that's why we don't use a comma to distinguish between keys and values. We use commas to distinguish between key value pairs. Okay, so var person equals, open curly bracket. Let's say name is the key. And then since we want to assign something to name, we need a value. So we use a colon, which is the double dots. If you don't know what a colon is, 2 dots. And then string, Trevor Page, end string, or end quote. Comma, because we want to have another key value pair. The key for the next key value pair is age, is the key. And then we put a colon. And then the value, so 34. And then comma, because we want to have another key value pair. The next key is gender, colon. And then the value for gender will be double quotes, male, end double quote, or single quote. Doesn't matter. You can use double or single quote. And then we close our curly bracket. Okay? So essentially, instead of creating an empty object like we did before with just open curly bracket, close curly bracket, we're putting stuff inside of the opening and closing curly brackets. And that stuff that we put inside has to have a specific syntax because we are putting syntax inside of the object notation, which is the curly brackets inside of a JavaScript variable. So the object notation that we need to put in there is the JavaScript object notation, which is key value pairs, which the key and value are separated by colons, and the key value pairs are separated by commas. Okay? Again, tough to get across over audio, but again, just check out the show notes page. It makes a lot of sense once you see it. And it's just one of those, it was one of those syntax things, if you want to call them that, it was difficult for me to remember. I'd oftentimes have to go back and re-Google something and say, what's the JavaScript object notation again? And then, oh, that's right, it's key, and then colon, and then value, and then comma, and then key, colon, value, comma, key, colon, value, comma. So I needed to sort of, I need to use it again and again and again before I finally would remember and not have to look it up. So yeah, it's one of those things where it's memorization. It's part of the game when it comes to learning how to program. So anyway, there you go. So that's an overview of the data types in JavaScript and how you sort of can use them in the real world, and a very small glimpse of some of the useful methods and functions that we can use on these data types to, do fun stuff with our code. So hopefully you enjoyed that. Like I said, check out the show notes. Show notes for the episode will be on coderscampus.com/25. You'll be able to see everything that I talked about here. And as always, when I end off these episodes, I like to talk about the Coders Campus membership platform that you can sign up for, the memberships where you can actually sign up and get access to all of the courses that I created. There's actually a new offer that I'm putting on the table right now, just testing it out, seeing how it goes. Previously, there's the $10 a month one where you can go to coderscampus.com/deal and get access to all my courses for $10 a month. Some people don't like paying monthly. Okay, and I also have a yearly plan, the $97 per year. But again, some people don't like paying yearly. Some people just want to say, hey, Trevor, I just want to pay once and then give me access to everything for life. So I've said, okay, fine. I'm going to put together a sort of an equivalent plan for those people. So I put it together. It's $297. So one payment of $297 gives you access to all of the courses I've ever created and all the courses I ever will create that obviously are related to learning how to program. Because if I create a course on entrepreneurship or something, that wouldn't coincide with Coders Campus. So anyway, so it's $297. You get access to everything I've ever done, everything I ever will do with respect to learning how to program. You get access to all the tests, all the assignments, the private Facebook community, so you can get in there and ask for help if you have questions or anything. That comes with it as well. and you can download the videos for offline access if you want to. If you take the train in the morning and you want to learn on the train, or you want to learn wherever, maybe in an airplane, who knows. Downloading the videos is always helpful, especially for those people who have a bad internet connection. So you can do that as well with this this program, this lifetime membership. So again, you pay once, you get access to everything for life. A lot of people like that. It's $297. Some people don't have $297 right off the bat, so I do offer the 3 payment plan, which is 3 payments of $99. Okay, but what I do, instead of penalizing you on the 3 payment plan, what I do is I reward you for doing the 1 payment plan. So if you do the 1 payment plan, you actually will get a 30-minute consultation with me. You can call me up. We do a video chat where you can talk to me about whatever it is that you need to talk about with respect to programming. If you're having troubles, if you need help, if you need career advice, if you need interview help, if you need explanations on whatever it is that you need help with respect to programming, that's what this 30 minutes is for. So you can actually book a call with me and be one-on-one with me, which is kind of cool. A lot of people like that. So if you do the 1 payment of $297 plan, then you get access to that as a bonus. You get a 30-minute phone call with me. Otherwise, if you can't do the $297, you can do 3 payments of $99. And then, hey, you get access to all of Coders Campus and all of everything I just said, all my courses, all the courses I will ever create. I upload videos every week, and so on and so forth. You've heard this all before. So if you want to check that out, you can go to, how to program Java. Go to coderscampus.com/lifetime. Okay? coderscampus.com/lifetime. LIFETIME. Lifetime. All one word. Okay? Check it out. If that floats your boat, I'd love to have you in here in the Coders Campus program. And if you do the 1 payment of $297, I look forward to talking to you in person, one-on-one. We'll have a little video chat, and we can get to know each other. Sound good? So check it out, coderscampus.com/lifetime, or check out the show notes at /25. Cool? So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, have fun, happy learning, take care of yourself, and bye for now.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Coders Campus podcast. But before you go, Trevor has a favor to ask you. In order to keep these episodes free, he'd love for you to leave a rating and review the podcast on iTunes. Just go to coderscampus.com/review to leave your own rating and review of the show. So if you have 30 seconds to spare right now, please help out by leaving a rating and review via coderscampus.com/review. It will ensure that you continue to get these awesome free podcast episodes each and every week. So if you like free swag, head on over to coderscampus.com/review. Happy learning!